Welcome, the rare gems. Let's face it, proving yourself to people who'll never fully understand or appreciate you is exhausting, pointless, and beneath you. That's why Sigma females don't bother. They've figured out the one thing most people never learn. Their worth isn't something anyone else gets to decide. They don't need applause, approval, or some superficial stamp of validation. They walk their own path unapologetically, and guess what? That's exactly why they thrive. As a Sigma female, this should resonate deeply with you. You're wired the same way. You don't exist to meet anyone else's expectations or fit into neat little boxes society tries to shove you into. You've already experienced how freeing it is to focus on what truly matters instead of wasting energy proving yourself to people who don't even matter. Here's the truth. The world needs more people like you and those Sigma females. Individuals who reject the noise, who choose substance over show, and who know their value without needing a pat on the back. So don't just admire this mindset, live it. Be unapologetic about who you are. Embrace the freedom that comes from letting go of others' opinions. Watch how this will elevate you in ways most people can't even imagine. Let's get started, rare gems. Number 1. Proving themselves feels like a transaction. For a Sigma female, the idea of proving herself to anyone feels like stepping into a negotiation she never agreed to. It's like someone silently sliding a contract across the table, expecting her to sign in exchange for their approval. The unspoken expectation is clear. Prove your worth, and maybe I'll give you recognition, respect, or love. To a Sigma female, that's not only insulting, it's a trap. She knows that proving herself often comes with strings attached. Whether it's meeting someone's expectations, bending her principles, or molding herself into a shape that makes others comfortable, the cost is always her authenticity. And let's be honest, Sigma females value authenticity more than almost anything else. They're not about to trade their independence, identity, or self-worth for someone else's approval. Why? Because she understands a deeper truth. Transactional validation is never enough. Even if she did jump through those hoops, the approval would be fleeting. It would come with new demands, higher standards, and another round of prove it again. That's a game she refuses to play. Instead, a Sigma female lets her actions speak for themselves. She builds her life on her own terms, not because she needs applause, but because she enjoys the challenge of staying true to herself. This rejection of the transactional mindset makes her presence powerful, her decisions deliberate, and her self-worth untouchable. For anyone who doesn't get it, her message is simple. If you can't see her value without her having to prove it, you're not the kind of person she's interested in keeping around. That's the ultimate power move, walking away from a game she never needed to play in the first place. And isn't that something we all wish we could do? Number 2. The opinion of others is too flimsy to build a life on. Sigma females understand a truth that most people spend their whole lives trying to figure out. Opinions are some of the flakiest foundations you could ever build on. People change their minds faster than the weather, and what's popular today is forgotten tomorrow. To chase approval from others is like trying to build a house on sand. You might feel stable for a moment, but one wave of criticism, gossip, or indifference, and it all crumbles. That's why Sigma females don't waste their time chasing validation or bending themselves to fit someone else's narrative. They know that relying on the opinions of others is not only unreliable, but also a direct threat to their independence and authenticity. Why trade their energy, creativity, or peace of mind for something as temporary as public opinion? It's not a deal worth making. Instead, they invest their time and effort into things that actually matter, things with depth and permanence. Whether it's mastering a skill, building a business, nurturing meaningful relationships, or simply growing into the best version of themselves, they focus on what brings genuine value to their lives. These pursuits aren't contingent on applause. They stand strong whether anyone is watching or not. To a Sigma female, someone's opinion is just that, an opinion. It doesn't define her, limit her, or influence her decisions. She's not here to fit into someone's fleeting idea of what's worthy or good enough. She's here to live on her own terms, building a life rooted in purpose, not perception. And the irony? By rejecting the need for approval, she ends up commanding the respect and admiration of others effortlessly. Because when you're unshakable, people can't help but notice. Number 3. They've already confronted their inner critics. Sigma females have a unique relationship with self-doubt. They don't run from it, hide behind distractions, or try to drown it out with applause. Instead, they've sat face to face with their inner critic and wrestled it into submission. They've done the hard work of confronting those nagging voices that question their worth, abilities, or choices. And because they've faced their insecurities head-on, external judgment doesn't faze them. Most people seek approval from others to quiet their own self-doubt. A compliment, a like, or a nod of approval feels like a band-aid over deeper wounds of insecurity. But Sigma females know that no amount of external validation can fix what's broken internally. That's why they go straight to the source, their own minds. They dig deep, address their fears, and challenge the doubts that hold them back. It's not easy, but it's the reason they emerge stronger, more confident and unshakable. This inner work gives them a clarity that most people lack. They don't need someone else to tell them they're enough. They already know they are. Their worth isn't something they outsource to public opinion. It's a solid foundation they've built within themselves. Because they've silenced their own inner critic, the opinions of others lose their power. Criticism doesn't sting the same way, and praise doesn't carry as much weight. They're free to live authentically, not because they're immune to judgment, but because they've learned that true peace comes from within. Sigma females remind us of an important truth. The loudest battles aren't fought outside, they're fought within. And once you win that internal war, the noise from the world around you becomes just that, noise. Wouldn't it be incredible to live with that kind of freedom? Number 4. They refuse to waste time on people who don't get it. Sigma. Females operate on a simple principle. If you don't get it, they're not going to waste time explaining it. They don't see the point in bending over backward to convince someone of their worth. After all, true value doesn't need a spotlight. It shines on its own. If someone can't recognize it naturally, that's their loss, not hers. This isn't about arrogance, it's about efficiency. Sigma females know their energy is limited, and they refuse to spend it on people who are too blind, insecure, or judgmental to see the value they bring to the table. They're not in the business of convincing anyone to stay, support, or understand them. Instead, they channel their energy into things that actually matter, like their goals, passions, and the few relationships that feel mutually enriching. The truth is, trying to prove yourself to someone who doesn't get it is a losing game. It's like yelling into the void, hoping for an echo. Sigma females understand that no matter how much you explain, demonstrate, or prove, some people just won't see your worth, either because they don't want to or because they're too wrapped up in their own insecurities. Instead of wasting time, Sigma females walk away. They'd rather invest their energy in people who naturally appreciate their presence, intelligence, and depth. They understand that not everyone is meant to be part of their journey, and that's perfectly fine. In doing so, they maintain their peace, self-respect, and independence. Their refusal to chase validation sends a clear message. Their worth is not a debate, and if you can't see it, they won't force you to. After all, why waste time convincing someone to value you when you already value yourself? At number 5, the only person they compete with is themselves. For Sigma females, competition isn't about outshining others or keeping score. It's about pushing themselves further than they were yesterday. They don't wake up thinking, how can I prove myself to others today? Instead, they think, how can I improve, grow, and evolve today? Their real competition is the version of themselves they were in the past, and they're fiercely committed to being better than that person, day in and day out. This drive for self-improvement isn't rooted in insecurity or the need for external validation. It's simply a desire to be the best version of themselves. Whether it's mastering a new skill, overcoming a fear, or refining their mindset, Sigma females understand that true success is internal. They measure their progress by their own standards, not by how they stack up against someone else's accomplishments. This mindset liberates them from the pressure of comparing themselves to others. They're not chasing titles, trophies, or praise. Instead, they focus on small but powerful improvements, knowing that even the smallest step forward is still a victory. Every day is an opportunity for growth. And for Sigma females, it's the only competition that matters. They don't need to outperform others because they're too focused on outperforming themselves. This internal drive allows them to live with purpose and peace, knowing that the only race worth running is the one that leads to personal evolution. Number 6. They see most expectations as a prison. For Sigma females, the societal expectations that many follow so blindly are seen as invisible chains, constraints disguised as opportunities. Society loves to package its rules and demands in a way that sounds appealing. Get the job, settle down, conform to the mold, and you'll find happiness. But Sigma females aren't buying it. They see through the illusion that these expectations lead to fulfillment. To them, it's more like a prison with a shiny exterior. From career milestones to personal life checkboxes, the weight of societal pressure feels suffocating. The idea that they must follow a prescribed path to be considered successful or worthy is nothing short of stifling. Sigma females would rather step out of the game entirely than live someone else's version of their life. They're driven by authenticity, by a desire to live according to their own values, not someone else's checklist. This refusal to conform often looks like rebellion to outsiders, but in truth, it's about liberation. Sigma females aren't rejecting expectations out of defiance. They're rejecting them because they don't need someone else's approval to validate their existence. They live by their own terms, carving out their own space where they can breathe freely without the weight of external judgment. To them, living authentically means freedom, freedom from the suffocating chains of other people's expectations. They'd rather remain true to themselves, even if that means standing alone, than follow a script written by someone else. And in doing so, they prove that the only life worth living is one you create for yourself, free from the confines of society's narrow definitions. Number 7. They're not about proving. They're about being. Sigma females aren't caught up in the endless pursuit of proving anything to anyone. They've reached a point where they don't need to demonstrate their worth or capabilities because they already know who they are. For them, the focus is not on impressing others or fitting into someone else's vision of success. It's about simply being. They're comfortable in their own skin, and that comfort comes from a place of self-assurance that's unshakable. They don't need to perform, pretend, or put on a mask to gain acceptance. The idea of constantly meeting external expectations? Not on their radar. They're too busy living authentically, following their own values, and staying true to their core beliefs. Sigma females understand that personal fulfillment doesn't come from validation or external recognition. It comes from knowing you're being yourself, unapologetically and without compromise. They're not in a race to prove anything because their sense of worth doesn't rely on someone else's approval. They know that being true to themselves, regardless of others' opinions, is the only measure that matters. When you're focused on being rather than proving, there's freedom. No need to perform or constantly measure up. Sigma females are already living in their truth, and that's all the proof they need. Their lives aren't a checklist of proof to others. They're a journey of authenticity, where the only expectation they meet is the one they've set for themselves. At number 8, proving feels like begging for permission. For Sigma females, the very idea of proving themselves feels like begging for permission to exist. They don't ask for approval to be who they are or do what they want. They've learned early on that living authentically means embracing their own worth without waiting for someone else's validation. When people try to push them into the prove yourself game, they see it for what it is, an invitation to shrink, conform, and diminish their individuality in exchange for some fleeting recognition. They reject this kind of submission outright. Asking for permission, whether it's in the form of approval, acknowledgement, or validation, is a surrender of power, something Sigma females refuse to do. They don't wait for a nod from society or anyone else to live their truth. If anything, they see the act of proving as an unnecessary transaction, one that cheapens their value and the authenticity they've worked so hard to cultivate. The rejection of this cycle is liberating. Sigma females operate from a place of self-assurance. where their sense of worth is firmly rooted in their own belief in themselves. They've spent no time trying to meet others' expectations or trying to make people believe in their capabilities. Instead, they're focused on what they can do for themselves, in their own way, without asking anyone for permission to shine. In their world, the only validation they need is the one they give themselves. Everything else is noise. Number 9. Their value system is non-negotiable. For Sigma females, living life on their own terms isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. They don't follow society's pre-written scripts or borrow someone else's idea of what makes a person successful or worthy. Their value system is non-negotiable because it's entirely self-defined. It's not up for debate, compromise, or anyone else's approval. Whether it's their career, relationships, or personal beliefs, Sigma females set their standards based on what resonates with their core values, not through a checklist handed to them by others. Climbing the corporate ladder, marrying by a certain age, or fitting into someone else's vision of success? That's not how they measure their lives. They know those traditional benchmarks often lead to empty victories if they aren't aligned with what truly matters to them. This independence doesn't mean they reject all outside input, but they're highly selective about what they allow to influence them. They evaluate everything against their internal compass, and if something doesn't align, they're not afraid to say no, even if it means standing alone. To them, conforming to someone else's values would feel like betraying themselves, and that's a price they're never willing to pay. Their unwavering commitment to their value system can be intimidating to those who thrive on control or validation. But for Sigma females, it's a source of unparalleled strength. It gives them clarity in decision-making and peace of mind, knowing they're living authentically. The world often pressures people to fit into neat little categories, but Sigma females remind us of an essential truth. Your worth isn't something that can be outsourced. It's an internal process, built and owned by you alone. And when your value system is non-negotiable, you stop living for others and start truly living for yourself. At number 10, proving is a game for the insecure. To Sigma females, the act of proving yourself to others feels like playing a rigged game, one where the rules are designed by someone else's insecurities and ever-changing expectations. And frankly, they're not interested in stepping onto that playing field. Why? Because the need to prove yourself is often rooted in insecurity, and Sigma females have worked too hard on their inner stability to let someone else's doubts dictate their actions. The game of proving is built on a fragile foundation. It relies on external approval to feel enough, forcing people to chase validation in an endless loop. Sigma females see through this charade. They understand that bending over backward to gain someone's acceptance is a sign that you're unsure of your own worth. And here's the kicker. The people demanding that you prove yourself are often projecting their own fears and inadequacies onto you. Sigma females refuse to participate in this power dynamic. They don't need a cheerleader, a critic, or an audience to validate their journey. Their confidence doesn't come from applause. It comes from knowing who they are and what they stand for. That clarity allows them to focus on what truly matters, living authentically, achieving their goals, and growing as individuals. In their eyes, proving is a waste of energy that could be better spent building something meaningful. Why waste time convincing someone of your value when you could simply be valuable? Sigma females know their worth isn't up for negotiation. They'd rather walk away from someone demanding proof than play a game that compromises their self-respect. Ultimately, their message is simple. Secure people don't need to prove themselves. And if someone can't recognize their value without proof, that's not someone worth their time. Number 11. They don't care for the approval economy. In today's world, everything seems to revolve around one thing: approval. Social media thrives on likes, comments, and shares, while real-life interactions often feel like subtle competitions for validation. But Sigma females, they've completely opted out of this approval economy. They're not interested in being noticed, admired, or applauded by the crowd. Instead, they focus on what genuinely matters to them, whether anyone is paying attention or not. To a Sigma female, chasing approval is a shallow and exhausting pursuit. It's like running on a treadmill that never stops. You keep going, but you never really get anywhere. She sees the trap of constantly seeking recognition. It forces people to compromise their authenticity, doing things they don't care about just to get reactions they don't need. That's not her style. Instead, she invests her energy into things that bring her personal fulfillment and align with her values. Whether it's a creative project, a career goal, or a personal growth journey, her actions are driven by purpose, not applause. The funny thing is, this makes her even more magnetic. People are drawn to her not because she's trying to impress them, but because she radiates self-assurance and focus. Sigma females live by a simple principle. The world doesn't need to see her every move for it to matter. She doesn't post for validation, speak for applause, or act for approval. She does what she does because it feels right to her, and that's enough. For those stuck in the approval economy, this mindset is revolutionary. It's a reminder that life's true rewards come from living authentically, not from chasing the fleeting high of being noticed. And honestly, isn't that the freedom we're all secretly craving? In conclusion, Sigma females don't waste their time trying to prove anything to anyone, and that's what makes them truly powerful. They understand that real strength doesn't come from chasing validation or meeting someone else's expectations. It comes from living authentically, trusting in themselves, and embracing their own worth. They don't need applause, approval, or permission. They already know who they are and what they're capable of. This is a reminder to you, too. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. The world will always try to push you into a mold or make you jump through hoops. But the truth is, the more you stand in your own power, the less you'll care about anyone else's opinion. Your journey is yours alone, and it's yours to define. No one gets to dictate what your worth is or what success looks like for you. So embrace your individuality, trust your instincts, and never let anyone make you feel like you need to prove your value. Like a Sigma female, stand tall in your truth, knowing that the only opinion that matters is the one you have of yourself. When you live authentically, you won't need to ask for permission or validation. You'll simply live, and that in itself is the greatest form of success. Thanks for watching The Rare Gems. See you in our next video. Bye for now, and God bless.